How did it come to this? The question hung heavily in the air as the sterile white walls of the hospital room seemed to close in around them. Jungkook, the golden magne of BTS, now lay unconscious in the intensive care unit, his body weakened by the relentless spread of the food poisoning that had plagued him for weeks. His condition had deteriorated so rapidly that doctors were left with no choice but to rush him into emergency care. As the gravity of the situation deepened, an unexpected set of visitors arrived at the hospital, the very military officials responsible for overseeing the meal plans that had allegedly caused this dire situation. Jin, ever the protector and eldest member of BTS, stood resolutely beside Jungkook's hospital bed, his eyes scanning the tense faces of the officials who entered the room. The tension was palpable, the weight of responsibility and regret thick in the air. How could they let this happen to one of the nation's most treasured figures? The guilt on their faces was unmistakable, but Jin had little time for empty apologies. "What do you plan to do now?" Jin's voice was sharp, cutting through the heavy silence like a blade. The officials shifted uneasily, their polished uniforms a stark contrast to the frailty of the young man lying before them. One of them cleared his throat, attempting to maintain composure. "We deeply regret the unfortunate incident, and we assure you that a full investigation is underway." But Jin was not easily placated. His usually warm demeanor was replaced by a cold determination, fueled by frustration and worry for his younger brother. "Regret won't fix this," he said, his voice trembling with barely concealed emotion. "Jungkook is fighting for his life, and you think an investigation is enough?" The officials exchanged nervous glances, clearly out of their depth in the face of Jin's unwavering resolve. They had underestimated the power of BTS's brotherhood, a force that extended beyond mere friendship and into the realm of family. Jin's presence in the hospital room was not just that of a bandmate. He was a guardian, a voice for Jungkook when he couldn't speak for himself. Outside the hospital, the news of the visit spread like wildfire. Armies across the globe held their breath, waiting for updates on Jungkook's condition. Social media exploded with messages of support and outrage, demanding accountability from those in charge. Hashtags such as #JusticeForJungkook and #StayStrongJK began trending worldwide, further amplifying the pressure on military officials to take decisive action. Meanwhile, inside the hospital room, Jungkook's mother sat silently by his bedside, clutching his hand tightly. Tears streamed down her face as she listened to the exchange between Jin and the officials. The sight of her son, usually so full of life and energy, now lying motionless, was almost too much to bear. She whispered prayers under her breath, hoping against hope that her son would wake up soon. Jimin, unable to contain his emotions any longer, arrived shortly after, his face etched with worry. He had been by Jungkook's side as much as his military duties allowed, and seeing his best friend in such a fragile state broke him. "Jungkook is strong," he whispered to Jin, trying to reassure himself as much as his young. "He will pull through this." But the reality was harsh. Doctors had already informed them that Jungkook's condition was critical, with the infection spreading rapidly despite their best efforts. Another surgery loomed on the horizon, a risky procedure that would determine whether he could recover fully or face even graver complications. Jin turned to the officials once more, his voice now steadier but no less determined. "We need more than promises. We need immediate action. Jungkook's health is not up for debate. You must take responsibility and ensure this never happens to anyone else." One of the higher-ranking officials, clearly shaken, nodded solemnly. "We understand. We will take full responsibility and do everything in our power to prevent future incidents." As they left the room, the tension remained thick. Jin sat down beside Jungkook, gently brushing the younger man's hair back. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, more to himself than to Jungkook. "We won't let this break you." Outside, the hospital was surrounded by fans holding vigils, their candles flickering in the night. Messages of hope and love adorned the walls, a testament to the unwavering support BTS had cultivated over the years. Armies refused to accept anything less than justice for Jungkook, and their voices would not be silenced in the days to come. The military officials would face mounting pressure to address the issue publicly, while BTS members rallied around their youngest, ensuring he had all the love and support he needed to fight through this ordeal. But for now, Jin remained by Jungkook's side, a pillar of strength in the face of uncertainty, silently vowing to never leave him alone in his battle for recovery. Under the sterile glow of the emergency room lights, Jungkook lay motionless, his breathing shallow and labored. The rhythmic beeping of the monitors echoed through the tense atmosphere, each sound a reminder of the fragile line between recovery and further deterioration. Jin sat beside him, his face etched with worry and exhaustion. He had barely left Jungkook's side since the food poisoning ordeal began, and now, with the situation taking a critical turn, his concern deepened. The air in the room grew heavier when the door slowly creaked open. High-ranking military officials stepped inside, their faces a mix of guilt and apprehension. These were the very individuals responsible for overseeing the welfare of soldiers, and now they were standing in front of one of South Korea's most beloved stars, gravely ill under their watch. Jin stood up, his posture tense but composed, his eyes filled with silent questions and unspoken accusations. One of the officials cleared his throat, his voice hesitant. "Mr. Kim, we deeply regret what has happened. We are conducting a thorough investigation, and we will ensure that those responsible are held accountable." Jin's jaw tightened as he glanced back at Jungkook, lying helpless on the hospital bed. "Ensuring accountability won't undo the pain he's going through," Jin responded, his voice calm but laced with an undeniable edge of frustration. "We trusted that he would be safe while serving his country. Instead, he's here, fighting for his health because of negligence." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. Jungkook's condition had worsened to the point where additional surgery was inevitable. The infection from the contaminated food had spread further than initially anticipated, and now doctors were preparing for a high-risk operation that would target the affected areas in his abdomen. Jin clenched his fists, his thoughts racing. He had always been the dependable eldest, the one who looked after his younger brothers in BTS. Seeing Jungkook in this state broke something deep inside him, an overwhelming sense of helplessness that he rarely felt. As the officials shuffled uncomfortably, they attempted to reassure him with formal apologies and promises of improvements within the military's food supply chain. But Jin was no longer interested in empty words. He wanted action. He wanted to see Jungkook up and smiling again. "I need you to do more than just apologize," Jin finally said, his voice steady. "Fix this system, not just for Jungkook, but for every soldier out there." Meanwhile, outside the hospital, armies had gathered in a peaceful show of support. Candlelight vigils, banners with heartfelt messages, and quiet prayers filled the space. Fans held on to hope, clinging to every update provided by HYBE and the medical team. Social media exploded with concern and anger, demanding justice and swift action from authorities. As the night wore on, Jin returned to Jungkook's side, taking his hand gently. "You're going to get through this, Jungkook," he whispered, his voice wavering with emotion. "We're all here for you." The question lingering in everyone's mind was one Jin couldn't escape. Would Jungkook pull through? And if he did, would this experience leave scars deeper than just the physical ones? The hours leading up to the surgery felt like an eternity, with the medical team making final preparations. Jin remained resolute, vowing not to leave Jungkook's side. The military officials, realizing the gravity of the situation, stayed outside the room, observing through the glass window with solemn faces. Jungkook's parents arrived shortly after, their faces streaked with tears, but holding on to hope. His mother, unable to contain her emotions, broke down as she whispered prayers over her son. Jin instinctively placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. As doctors wheeled Jungkook into the operating room, the world held its breath. Would the surgery be successful? Would Jungkook wake up and smile again? And most importantly, who would be held accountable for this near tragedy? Jin watched as the doors closed behind Jungkook, his heart heavy with worry, but filled with determination. He wasn't just fighting for Jungkook anymore, he was fighting for justice.